Hey folks, welcome, and thanks for joining me today. As you saw in the title, we're going to answer some questions. As you can see, I got my coffee here, and I got a lot of stuff here out on this table. I'm going to try to get through it all as quickly as possible so I don't bore you and you don't click away to someone else's video. But we are going to answer the question, what are the preppers not telling us? They seem to have a unlimited amount of information that they put out to us, but there are things that they don't really mention. I don't want to say the ugly side of emergency preparedness, but it's the less pleasant side. It's the cost. It's the dedication. It's how it all works in your head to think, or at least make yourself feel as though you have what you need. I know it can be overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be. You start with the basics. If you're just getting started, or even if you're a seasoned prepper, you already have been through this and have probably even plateaued at some point and weren't quite sure which direction to go in. Or if you're brand new, like I said, you're just getting started, you're not quite sure what direction to go in. And there's no shortage of content out there that lays a bunch of gear out on a table and they start showing you things and you start thinking to yourself, wow, that costs a lot. That's a lot of money. And yes, it can be, but it doesn't have to be. So let's go back and start with the basics. The basics are shelter, food, water, medical supplies or personal hygiene, and security. And the priorities obviously are shelter, food, and water. Those are the things that sustain us. Those are the things that we need every day. And then medical and personal hygiene, as well as security, kind of flows within. If you watch the Sensible Prepper channel with Such on Tuesdays, in fact, today is Tuesday, I will be catching his live at 12 o'clock. He is a plethora of fantastic information from the bottom all the way to the top. He reviews products and talks about scenarios like I try to do, from the very basics all the way to advanced. So if you want to get further information, you can check out his channel. But again, thanks for checking out mine, because I'm trying to do my part to help where I can. And let's dive in. Let's get started. First, we'll talk about shelter. Shelter is our house. If we're in a situation where we're not at home, that's a whole nother subject that we will talk about in different videos or some other time. For right now, we're talking about our house as being our shelter. It's already established. It has 4 walls and a roof and windows and doors, and it's our shelter. It's our house. So number one, we've checked that off. Next, we'll move to food. On some of the channels, you can see where they show you the freeze-dried food that you can get, which you just boil water and put in, and in a few minutes it's ready to eat. That's all well and good. They also show you dehydrated type canisters like this. And the first thing I'll tell you about those is they get very expensive very quick. The freeze-dried meals, I don't buy them very often, but I do have some. And they can range anywhere from $8 or $10 per meal to something like this. These number 10 cans of freeze-dried. This one happens to be powdered eggs. I bought these just before the egg issue started. I do still buy eggs. Yes, I pay $6, I think. It's come down the past couple of weeks, but it's not as inexpensive as it used to be. So I had bought these when I started to see those prices climb. I thought to myself, how far is this going to go? Are eggs going to be unavailable? Are they going to be so expensive I don't want to buy them? Maybe I should pick up some of the powdered eggs, such as this, just in case. It has a 25-year shelf life. If I don't use it, which I haven't, it's not even opened yet. If I don't use it now, I may use it some other time. There may come a situation where I have to use it, but I'll have it. That's what's important. But it isn't necessary. You can live without eggs. Eggs to me are just something that I enjoy for breakfast. We add them to, different baking dishes. You know the routine. But as far as getting your food supply start to build up, or your pantry, a lot of us, at least my generation, the Gen Xers, we were raised by the boomers, and the boomers always had a pantry full of food. It's just what they did. I know my grandparents did it, my parents did it, and I do it. I keep a pantry full of food at least a week just in my kitchen pantry. And then I have a secondary pantry, which is basically just a shelf unit, down in my basement, where I keep other stuff. And over the years, that grew because I was building up. I'd buy a little bit extra at the grocery store, and that's the way to do it. Every time I go to the grocery store, I spend a few dollars, usually between $5 and $10, not much, and it adds up. If you do it once, you think, oh, I got this. What good is that going to do me? But then you do it again, and you get a little more, and you do it again, and you get a little more, and it slowly grows. And it doesn't have to be all that hatefully expensive. And I'll show you, because simple things like cans of green beans, and this one happens to be asparagus. I usually catch these for about $1 a can. I love it when I see them for less than $1 a can. But usually the going right now is about $1 a can when they're on sale. Normal price could be as high as $2, sometimes $3 a can, which to me for green beans is outrageous. But it is what it is in today's world, and we just have to suck it up and deal with it. But like I said, I do catch these for about $1 a can. I'll buy a couple of cans every trip to the grocery store. I do the same thing with canned fruit. When I see that that's on sale, I'll pick up a can or two of some pineapple, which is what this is, or some peaches, or some pears or something, just to put back on my secondary pantry shelf, because you never know. You're in the middle of a recipe, you think, oh, I need a can of pineapple for this, or you're putting dinner together and you think, oh, some green beans would go good with this dish. I don't have any in my pantry. Let's go to my secondary pantry. Pretty sure I have some there. That's how that works. But as far as a preparedness or a prepper situation, it doesn't have to be hateful. And I know with a lot of the videos, they show these prep rooms with the shelf units and the hundreds probably of cans, and a lot of us don't have that kind of space. I see, because I read the comments as well, there's a lot of people that ask the question, well, I live in an apartment and I only have 2 closets. What am I supposed to do? Well, this is what you're supposed to do. Every trip to the grocery store, when you see something's on sale, don't go spending a lot of money or on things that aren't on sale, because it's not really serving that purpose. Your main goal is to have that cushion to fall back on, and it doesn't break the bank or put you in a financial situation where a week or 2 weeks later, you have to go back to your store because you spent all your money putting the items in your storage, and you don't have it in your main pantry. So as you shop each week or every other week or however often you shop, just a few extra items, and that will start to grow. You can also get meats, because you can't live on vegetables alone, and there's no shortage of meats. Now these, the Spam and Armor, I think is the other brand, I've watched them increase in price considerably, and they're not just cheap meat in a can anymore. These I've seen go as high as like $4, which is outrageous, but I do catch them on sale at the grocery store occasionally, and usually the expiration date is at least a year. Yeah, this one's good until July of 2026. And that, again, is the best buy date. It's still good after that. You'll see some channels that'll tell you that because of the technology in how they make these cans and how they seal these cans, that the shelf life, if kept in the right conditions, is almost infinite. Not sure if I would fall back on that being infinite, because it is good to rotate your stock. I usually rotate mine about every 6 months, 12 months at the longest, to where when I start to see stuff on my secondary pantry shelf that's been there a while, I'll pull it to the front, I'll put it in my primary pantry, and my next trip to the grocery store where, I know I need a can of Spam, instead of putting it in my primary pantry, I put it in my secondary pantry because I pulled from my secondary pantry up to my primary, and that's how my rotation works out. A lot of people will write the dates on the top of the can, and there's a ton of ways you can build spreadsheets to make it more organized. I personally don't have that kind of time or the willpower to do all that, and hey, hats off to those that do. And I watch a bunch of channels where they film in their prep room and they have all the shelves with everything labeled and organized, and I wish. So hats off to them. No shortage or plenty of options when it comes to canned meats. Like I said, you have the Spam, and you also can get tuna. I catch that on sale, and chicken. I catch that on. In fact, this is Kirkland, so we all know that came from Costco. This probably came from the grocery store. Costco is a phenomenal resource for building your stores or your preps, because I think the cans of chicken come in a pack of 6 or 8, and it's about $15. I don't remember. I know I'm going to use a can of chicken this week, maybe even 2 cans of chicken this week. This makes great chicken salad, in my opinion. And that's primarily what I use it for, or like on top of a salad. But I'll buy that 6 or 8 pack at Costco, knowing that I need some for my primary pantry, and I'll put the other ones on my secondary shelf, and I don't have to buy it every week. I can pull from my secondary shelf, as I explained. So the cans of meats, and the great thing about any of the canned goods here, and we're going to look at them quickly, they're pretty much open and eat. You don't have to do any cooking. Yeah, cold salmon in a can, probably not going to be the most tasty, but it is edible. So if there's a situation where you can't cook, you don't have to, as long as you have a can opener. And we should all have the hand type can openers. Some of these are pop top, like this. You don't need the can opener, but a lot of this stuff requires a can opener. And I like to think that 99% of us have a can opener. There's probably a good portion that have electric can openers. I do not have an electric can opener. I've had them in the past, but I'm old school. I have 2 or 3 of the hand can openers. I keep one in the kitchen. I keep one, downstairs on my secondary shelf, just in case the one in my kitchen breaks or something. But it's always good to have those around. There's other meals like Chef Boyardee or any other type of meal in a can that are pretty good. The shelf life on these is usually pretty good. This one is December 2026, and I really couldn't tell you when I bought this. I didn't write the date on the top. It's not that old because it's still best before 2026, so it's probably less than 12 months old. The grocery store had these on sale for $1 a can. Same with soup in a can. These are great. Grocery store had these on sale, I think 2 for $3, and I picked up two or 4 cans. I don't remember. But again, I usually get the stuff when it's on sale, and if I see it and it's on sale and I haven't put anything in my cart yet for my $5 to $10 per trip, because that's usually about all I spend. $5 to $10, sometimes $15 is it. But here's some chili in a can, which has a pop top, thank goodness. So in case, and this is good by, again, July 2026. So this stuff, it was all on the secondary pantry shelf in the same kind of area, and that's where I grabbed all this stuff from. The beef stew, probably not as, we don't eat this. This is March of 2026. We don't eat this often. I prefer to just make beef stew, but in a pinch, it has a pop top. You can eat it right out of the can. You don't even have to heat it or cook it. Probably not the greatest because it isn't heated. But if you have a way to heat it, you can use your grill outside, or if you have a gas stove in your kitchen, you could light it with a match. You have options. But if you don't have any options, at least you're not starving. You have something. And these I picked up recently. These are rice in a bag. The directions are 90 seconds in the microwave. That tells me that it's already cooked. It's sealed in this pouch. I'm not sure what the date's going to be. It's probably not going to be that long. Yeah, this is October 2025. And this one is June of 2025. And that's the best by date. So it's going to be best to eat it before that date. Now, the reason I picked these up, because they were on sale at the grocery store, I think 2 for $3 or 4 for $5 or something, because these are going to go in my backpacking gear. And this is something I can heat it or I can eat it right out of the package, because the 90 seconds in the microwave tells me that it's already cooked. It just needs to be heated. So I could rip this open and eat this right out of the pack. When I'm backpacking, I do carry a small camp stove as well as a grill if I can build fire when I'm backpacking. So I do have a way to heat this. And I can tell you this, and I didn't bring any out, but you can get tuna as well as chicken and salmon in a foil pack similar to this. And you just open it up, and I'll combine the two together, and either chicken or tuna or salmon. You know, this is red beans and rice. So I'd probably add chicken to this. This one's cheddar broccoli. So I could go anyway with this. I could put salmon in it, or tuna or chicken, or even Spam. I know Spam also comes in small foil packs. I don't even know if I have any of those, but I've seen them. The small foil single serve, I think I've seen them at the dollar store, which is a great idea, great for backpacking. They don't have the longest shelf life, so I would suggest rotating them more often. Now, the next step in storing food would be canning. Now, I did not grow these carrots. This is carrots that I canned maybe a year ago. Costco had carrots on sale. I think it was a 10-pound bag for like $3. 10 pounds of carrots for $3. So I bought the whole bag, and I canned, I think, 12 pints of carrots. So yes, I do pressure can and water bath can. It was something that I picked up from my grandmother. I suggest everyone learn how to do that if you have the resources to do it, because again, it's something else it can be costly to get into it. The canner, the jars, the lids, the rings, all of that. It's just an added expense. You can pick the stuff up used, which is always great. The Facebook Marketplace, you know, people are always selling stuff they cleaned out of their grandmother's house or that's been sitting around their house. But, you know, I have carrots and other vegetables. You know, here's a quart of chili that I did in October of last year. I have a really big pot that the wife got me for Christmas one year. It's probably 15 gallons. It's a huge stock pot. And we all do the same thing. We make a nice pot of chili and we eat it for that meal, maybe a leftover meal, and then it usually sits in the fridge for a few days and we end up throwing it out. To me, that's a waste of food, and I'm guilty of that. I've done that myself, where I've made something and I had it for the meal or the dinner that night, and then maybe a leftover a night or two later. But then at the end of the week, when I clean the fridge out of the leftovers, which I do every week, there's usually something left that I end up tossing. So I started canning a portion of the larger stuff that I would make, like chili or spaghetti sauce. This is some soup that I made, a pot of soup in, this was July of 2024. It's dated. These are kind of the stuff that's in the front. I do have some stuff that's a little bit older, but I try to rotate my stuff out about once a year. At the grocery store, you'll see sometimes when stuff goes on sale, like I said, I try to pick it up when it goes on sale. This was a pork butt, and they come in huge 8-10 pound chunks. The grocery store near me had this on sale for, I think, 29 or 39 cents a pound. It was mind-blowing. It was so cheap. And I think I bought the whole 10 or 12 pound pork butt for about $6. And that's a lot of pork. So I cold packed it and pressure canned it. And now I have about 12 jars of pork. And that really does it for food. Like I said, you don't have to get crazy. You buy, a can or two extra at the grocery store. I know tuna can be on sale for about $1 a can, as well as the vegetables or the canned fruits. the canned meals like the Chef Boyardee. So you don't have to spend a fortune or a small fortune, buying this, survival type stuff. It is nice, excuse me, it is nice to have. And again, I even have, but I've been doing this a long time. So for those that are just getting started, don't be so intimidated that it's something that you can't do, because it is something that you can do. It's something you can do very easily. And that about covers food. Now, this next thing is water. Water is vital. Dehydration usually sets in about a day and a half. Excuse me. So once dehydration starts to set in, we get fatigued. And when we're in an emergency situation, such as a power outage or a natural disaster, a flood or a tornado or some severe thunderstorms or anything along those lines, even as far out as a zombie apocalypse, if you want to believe in that kind of thing. I don't do any of this for a zombie apocalypse, because personally, I don't think there's ever going to be a zombie apocalypse. But I know my power does go out. Just a couple of years ago, we had a tornado come through here, which I don't live in a tornado area, but they do happen occasionally, and it knocked power out for a few days. I wasn't sweating it, because I'm prepared for things like that. And when you're not prepared for things like that, the stress builds. When the stress starts building, you start making bad decisions. When you make bad decisions, you cause a situation that's already bad to get worse. And what we don't want to do is make the situation that we're in go from bad to worse. It's already bad. We didn't have any control over that. We don't want it to get worse. That we have control over. So being a little bit prepared, I think FEMA says 3 days, which that's utterly ridiculous, because power goes out for, a couple hours. We don't even sweat it. It goes out for a day or two. It's a bit of an inconvenience, but we make do. But when power goes out for a week or longer, then we start to sweat it. So my suggestion would be a minimum of 2 weeks, and don't stop. Don't stop ever. As you build your supplies, you buy your extra cans of green beans or your Chef Boyardee, utilize as much space as you have. If you're in an apartment and all you have is a closet or underneath your bed, or, utilize the space that you have, and then start your rotation. So you may have 2 weeks, you may have 4 weeks, you may have 6 weeks. Really doesn't matter. You're going to use it eventually as you rotate it. So it's not going to go to waste, So again, that would be my suggestion. So let's move over to water. Water is vital, as I said, and water is fairly inexpensive. It's getting worse. I've seen some of the cases of Deer Park and Dasani going for as high as $4 and $5 a case. But in general, I don't know where this one came from, but I keep bottles of water around, and then that's the minimum. When the power goes out and you're on municipal water, it's always wise to fill your bathtub so you can use your toilet. I know people are sketched out about drinking water out of the bathtub. They do make those bladders you can buy. I forget what they're called. It's a bladder bag that goes in your bathtub, that it's the size of your bathtub, which holds anywhere between 30 and 50 gallons of water. You can fill that up, and then you have water that you can source. If you don't have that bladder, I would still suggest filling up your bathtub, because you may not want to drink it without filtering it or purifying it, but at least you could wash your hands, you could flush your toilet, and it's not difficult to flush your toilet when there's no water if you have water in a bucket. Generally, your toilet will have writing on it somewhere that will tell you the efficiency of that toilet, the gallons per flush, or GPF. And a lot of them are 1.1, 1.7, some of the older toilets. Some of the newer toilets that are eco-friendly toilets will flush with less than a gallon. You can usually gauge it by that, but I would flush it a couple of times with what it says. If it says 1.2 gallons, I would fill up a bucket or the bathroom trash can or anything you could put water in with about a gallon of water, and I would dump it right in the toilet, in the bowl, and watch it flush down. And then I would take a little bit out of that, say 3/4 of a gallon. Can I flush this toilet with 3/4 of a gallon? It may not flush all the way, but you have to figure that out on your own. And then if you have a situation where you are utilizing the water in your bathtub, at least you can wash your hands and flush your toilet. I would suggest, and most people probably would, try to filter that water, or at least boil that water to get out any impurities or anything that could be bad for you. And you certainly want to do that. When it comes to filtering water, you can pick up, which these are pretty expensive. This is a Sawyer mini filter. This screws right on top of the water bottle, and you squirt it right into your mouth. It flows through here. These are good for, I think, a couple 100 gallons. I'm not sure. If you're sourcing water from somewhere and you don't have the water bottle, which water bottles are pretty common, it does come with a bag, and you fill this bag with water. Wherever you get the water from, it could be a creek, it could be a barrel outside hooked to your rain gutter, it could be the water you put in your bathtub, anything. This screws right on the bag. You squeeze the bag, the water goes through, you can drink it, or you can put it into an empty bottle, or any container for that matter, and it makes it safe to drink. And of course, you always have the option of boiling the water if you have the available fuel. If you have charcoal or propane for your gas grill, or your charcoal grill outside, or you have a mini stove, or you have a gas stove in your kitchen, you can light, turn on the burner. The electric lighting system isn't going to work when the power's out, but if the power's out, the gas is usually still on. You can turn on the burner and light it with a match or a lighter, and the burner will work. You can boil the water, which boiling the water will kill all of the impurities, the viruses, the stuff that'll make you sick, but it generally doesn't affect the taste or the clarity. It doesn't filter out particles or anything like that. It could still taste a little weird or have maybe some floaties in it. That's where the filter is good for. But you can also, you can strain it through a bandana or a t-shirt or any piece of cloth, and that will even help, because a bandana is another thing, and we'll get to this stuff over here in a minute. If you do, because if you watch the prepper channels, they'll show you these big rain catchment systems with these 300-gallon tanks and and all this, and I have all that because I've been doing this for a while. But it isn't necessary. If you live in an apartment or a condo, you can't exactly put in a 275-gallon IBC tank hooked to your rain gutter and have a rain catchment system, or have a 55-gallon food-grade barrel outside that you can collect water in. If that's the case, or if you have a creek or a stream or anything nearby where you can get water, you can use bleach to kill the viruses if you can't boil. I believe, and don't quote me on this, I'm pulling off memory because it obviously doesn't have it on the directions, but you can use standard bleach. This is just Clorox germicidal bleach. You can use that to make your water safe to drink. I believe the ratio is 8 drops per gallon, and I'm not sure what that converts to as far as teaspoons, because how many of us have droppers around? How are we going to make it drop? But I'm pretty sure that if you look it up online, it'll tell you in the measurements, a 1/4 teaspoon or a 1/2 teaspoon or a teaspoon, whatever it says. I would look it up. I have it written down somewhere. I think it's on my rain catchment barrel. I taped the label to the side of it because not only do I have the germicidal bleach, but I also use chlorine tablets. And these are just basic pool chlorine tablets. I forget the name of the chemical that you need, but there's a certain type of chlorine that you can use in place of bleach. I have the luxury of being married to a scientist, and when I asked her about this, she said she would look into it, and she told me what I needed. So I do have these chlorine tablets. Now, these are huge. It's a pellet, probably about the size of a hockey puck, or a little bit smaller. Actually, these are 1 inch. 1 inch chlorinating tablets is what these are. She did inform me that I'm going to have to crush it up and use I forget what she wrote on the paper, 1.5 tablespoons per 5 gallons or whatever to use this in place of the bleach. So what I have here is redundancy. Again, because I've been doing this for a while, bleach has a shelf life. These have a little bit longer of a shelf life if kept in the right conditions. These stay in a cool, dry environment. There's no humidity. So as you can see, they're not solid together. They're still nice, loose tablets. I've had these for about 2 years. Not something that I will use regularly because I have other methods of purifying my water, as well as I have water stored, not in small bottles like this, but I have 5-gallon Deer Park bottles that I purchased a while back that are sealed and stored away. So I have redundancy, but it takes a long time to build that up. So I would suggest just starting with an extra case of water. Throw an extra case of water in the floor, in your closet, or slide it underneath of the bed, and you'll at least have that. All right, so that does it for food and water. We've covered shelter. Now let's move into a few basic necessities. We'll get into some medical and hygiene, which is pretty basic. This is a first aid kit that was given to me at my regular job. I work for a company that's nice enough to do stuff like this for us. So they gave out first aid kits for all of the employees that work, out in the field. And then I bought this pouch off Amazon. I think it was about $12. And I think I'm going to pull some of the first aid supplies out of there because I already have a first aid kit in my truck. I don't need a second one, but I'm not going to pass up the opportunity of free stuff. So I'm going to pull some of that out, and I'm going to use this to build in one of my bags. I'm not sure if it'll be my emergency bag or my bug out bag or my day pack or my through hike pack, but I have multiple backpacks, and this will end up finding a home in one of them. I'm just not sure where. And then as far as first aid goes, these are also Costco. As you can see, I'm a big fan of Costco. I have a bunch of Costco stuff here because when it comes to medical, you can't just run to the doctor in an emergency situation. So you need to have basic stuff. This first aid kit, it's basically just a boo-boo kit. It's not a trauma kit. There's no cat tourniquet in there. I do have one cat tourniquet. Do I think I'll ever need to use it? Probably not. Most injuries are cut fingers or scraped knees or something basic. I don't think I'll ever be in a situation, at least I hope I'm never in a situation to where I would need the clotting bandages, for bullet wounds, or a cat tourniquet for severe lacerations. I don't want to think that I should expect that kind of injury or that level of injury in an emergency situation. I do have those items, but not a lot of it. I keep very little of that stuff around. I know I've watched channels where, they say, oh, you should have 2 or 3 cat tourniquets. And maybe if you're in the Ukraine right now, you might need that many cat tourniquets. But, here, I'm not sure we're ever going to need, that many cat tourniquets. At least I hope we're never going to need that many cat tourniquets. But scraped fingers, cut fingers, small abrasions, all day long, very common. It's great to have a boo-boo kit. In fact, I didn't bring one out, but a couple of months ago, I saw at the grocery store, it was a small box of just regular Band-Aids. They were $1. I don't know how many was in it, but it was a box of Band-Aids for $1. So I think I bought 3 boxes. I think they're back there on the shelf where I keep the medical hygiene type stuff. Antacids are always good. The older you get, the more you get heartburn. And when you're in a stressful situation, you can get indigestion. Now this food, and I would recommend buying food that you eat, not food that you think that you'll eat in a stressful situation. Buy what you regularly eat, because when the situation gets to the point where you need to resort to this, at least you're not shocking your system with food it's never seen before, because that would give you some cramps or make you sick. And then you would absolutely need this kind of stuff. And then, of course, pain relievers. I probably have Advil and Aleve in large bottles like this. I think I get these at Costco. I don't know how much they are. They're probably $10 or $15. I'm sure they're not cheap. But it's one of those things. It's 325 of them. And we keep these in a cabinet upstairs in one of the bathrooms in a smaller bottle. And then I have the little travel size that the wife keeps in her purse and I keep in my truck. And I don't continually buy those little bottles because they're really expensive. I get the big bottles. When the little bottle runs out, I open the little bottle, I dump some from the big bottle in it, I put the big bottle back on the shelf, and then I take the small bottle and put it back where I use it regularly. Peroxide is usually good to have. If you remember, during COVID, alcohol and peroxide were non-existent. And what does alcohol and peroxide do? They help clean wounds. They'll help disinfect a wound. And what people fail to realize that there are other sources to accomplish that same task. So while everybody was scurrying around trying to find peroxide and alcohol, what people didn't realize is generic Listerine or brand name Listerine. This is Equate. I got it from Walmart. It was probably about $3. I've had this for a couple of years because I think during COVID, I bought probably 4 of these because the shelf was full of these, but there was no peroxide and alcohol. And this will do the exact same thing. If you cut your finger, you dump peroxide or alcohol on it to clean it. This will do the same thing. It will clean and disinfect. It's an antiseptic. So this works just as good. And you can use it as mouthwash. And then, of course, things like, I don't even know what brand this is. It's a generic, like a Benadryl for allergies or bee stings. I'm allergic to bees, so I have to keep this kind of stuff around. And then one of my daughters also has some allergies, so we keep this kind of stuff around, as well as, in the small travel containers. Clorox wipes. We all use these at home. I think I get these at Walmart maybe in a 3 or a 5 pack. They're fairly inexpensive. They damn near last forever. I generally don't wait until I'm completely out before I go buy another 3 or 5 pack. In fact, I think when I pulled this off the shelf, this one's opened. I think there was 3 more on the shelf. Usually, when I get down to 1 or 2 left on the shelf, that puts it in my head, hey, next time I'm out, I should pick some of those up and replenish my stock downstairs. And of course, the wife uses these all over the house, the kitchen, the bathroom. They're disinfectant wipes. We went through a ton of these during COVID, but during COVID, when there was none of these to be found, I had some on the shelf. I didn't have a lot, but I had enough to get by. So between these, and I always keep an extra gallon or 2 of bleach, because bleach does have a shelf life, usually around 9 months, and it loses its potency. It still works, just not as well. So I generally try not to keep bleach around that long. Usually 6 to 9 months is about the longest I'll keep bleach. But we keep bleach by the washing machine for laundry, and then I keep an extra gallon of bleach, sometimes 2 gallons on the shelf. Right now I just have 1 gallon because not long ago the wife said, hey, do you have any bleach downstairs? And I said, of course I have bleach downstairs. So I brought up a gallon of bleach, and now at some point, the next time I'm out, I'll pick up another gallon of bleach and put it on my shelf down here, and I'll go back to 2. And then I have these. And then, of course, toilet paper. This, I'm not sure. I think I got this at the grocery store. It was after COVID. For some reason, when COVID hit, it was an illness that affected your lungs and your breathing and your chest. But everybody ran out and got toilet paper. There was a shortage of toilet paper when there was a pandemic with a breathing situation. The medicine aisle was full. I bought cough syrup and decongestants, and because fully stocked, but the toilet paper aisle was empty. So sometimes people don't think, they go into panic mode. They think, oh my God, what am I going to do now? I got to go get toilet paper. Okay, well, you're talking about an illness that affects your lungs and your chest. Cough syrup might have been a better choice because nobody said anything about diarrhea, but there was a shortage of toilet paper. I do keep a stock of toilet paper. I did then, and I do now, but I've always kept a stock of toilet paper. I buy it in much larger packs than this because it's cheaper. I think I get the big, huge packs. They're about this long, this tall. I don't know how many rolls are in it, but I get it at Costco. I used to get it at Walmart. I've bought it at BJ's before. The biggest pack I can get, and they range between $20 and $30. They've gone up considerably since COVID, but it lasts a long time, and I don't have to keep running out every week to get toilet paper. So usually about once a month, maybe every 5 weeks, 6 weeks, I'll pick up a pack of toilet paper when I start to see it getting low. And that's it. And also paper towels, napkins. I have some of that stuff around. But for the most part, we all know the drill. We all went through COVID and we see how it works. Okay, let's move on. That covers medical and hygiene. And of course, you want to have toothbrushes, extra toothpaste and Q-tips and cotton balls and all those things. And they're all fairly inexpensive to buy. I would not suggest going out and buying it all at one time, but the next time you're at Walmart picking something up, throw a toothbrush in usually they're $1 or $2. You won't notice if you're spending just a few dollars every trip. And then you'll get a storage bin. That's what I use, or whatever you choose to use, however you want to store your supplies, and then you realize that, well, damn, my storage bin is full. I got to go get another storage bin. And you keep buying 1 or 2 extra things every time you go to the store. And the next thing you know, that storage bin. Now you got 2 full storage bins. And it just keeps growing. So don't be intimidated, by the videos where people have all this stuff and it costs all this money. Because believe me, everything here, if you dive into the rabbit hole deep enough, can get extremely expensive. Whether you're talking about the food or the water or the filtration or the medical supplies or the hygiene supplies, but it doesn't have to be. That's the point I'm trying to make here. All you have to do is get a few extra things. A trip to Costco, I think this was like $8. I think it was in a 2-pack for about $12 or $15. So 1 pack of antacids, and it's huge. There's 265 of them in here. Was about $8. And then, I think Costco sells the 4-pack that are shrink wrapped of the ravioli for like $3. So for $11 or so, this is what I got that week. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but I'm just giving you an example that for about $10 or $11, you at least have 4 cans of Chef Boyardee and then a little bit of antacid, because, when you're a kid, this stuff is great, but, when you're 50, it might get you a little heated up here in the indigestion area of yourself. So it's always good to have that kind of stuff. Let's move on to, I have a few basic things here. And these are just examples of what you would need or what would be nice to have. And that's some matches. These I picked up at Home Depot. These are weatherproof matches. I saw these on the Sensible Prepper channel. He stumbled across them at Home Depot, and they were fairly inexpensive, like $3 or $5 or something. I made a special trip to Home Depot to get them just to see. I have a Home Depot not far from me, and I went up there and said, I wonder if they sell them in my Home Depot. Let me go look. Wow, they do have them. I'm getting some. So I bought a few boxes of these weatherproof matches. They're a little bit longer, so they burn a little bit longer than your standard small box match. I pulled these out of one of my camping bins. I had to dig it out because that's where these live now. I take these camping. Them being a little bit longer, it's easier to reach in to light my campfire. So that's why I like these, and they're weatherproof. These supposedly, I have not tested them, that you can light it, dunk it in water, and it'll relight. Excuse me, and it'll relight. So these are phenomenal. I can't wait to test these out. I have not done so yet, but I will be doing that this season. And then, of course, these are cheap to buy. In fact, I just ordered on Amazon some Mylar emergency blankets. I keep these in the truck. I keep them in my packs. I think I bought a 12 pack for $8 on Amazon just yesterday. I ordered 12 more of these for $8 because they're always good to have. The downside of these is they're a one-time use. First of all, once you take this out and unfold it, you're never going to get it back in this little thing. And if you can, hats off to you, because I've tried. And I can't get them back into this little packet. And they're so very thin, you know, you breathe on them almost, and they get a hole in them. But in an emergency situation, they are good to have. And next is tarps. This I think I picked up at Walmart, probably. But actually, I've gone to concerts and different events outside where they gave out free tarps. Clear plastic, you know, very thin, very cheap, basically a one-time use tarp. So tarps are very inexpensive. I think I got this at Walmart for $2 or $3 a while back. This just lives in the camping bin. I saw it when I went and got the matches out and thought, you know, hey, it'd be good to tell people, you know, to at least have a cheap tarp around if you don't have a rain jacket. If you're in a situation where, you know, there's a storm or something and you have to go outside and there's no power, the last thing you want to do is get soaking wet because you have no way to get dry other than just naturally. You can't take your clothes off and throw them in the dryer when there's no power. So at least being able to avoid getting wet is helpful. So having a cheap poncho and then a bandana. I have, you know, these are cotton bandanas. I tend to stay away from the rayon or the nylon bandanas. I try to buy just cotton bandanas. I think I got these on Amazon a couple of years ago. They were fairly inexpensive. I even put a ring in it, you know, a grommet. These are plastic, so I can still run them through the washing machine and the dryer to clean them. The plastic doesn't beat around in the dryer and, you know, make the wife worry that I'm damaging the dryer. So it is nice. And I use a carabiner to clip it on, you know, my backpack strap or something. But, you know, bandana is good. You can, you know, you can cover your face with it. You know, if there's debris in the air or a pandemic, it helps. It's better than nothing. I'm not sure what all virus-wise this would filter out, or even if, but it doesn't hurt to have it. If you're in a smoky area, like if you remember, some of us were old enough to remember 9/11. One of the biggest issues they had in the rescue efforts was the debris in the air. So bandanas are a good thing. I'm sure the Californians that were dealing with the forest fires recently, you know, God bless them for making it through that. And you know, I feel for those that did not. You know, people lost their homes, and it was just a horrible situation. I didn't like watching it on the news, but you know, a lot of smoke in the air. If you remember, here on the Mid-Atlantic region, the northeast part of the country where I live, a couple of years ago, there was some forest fires up in Canada that was actually blowing the smoke all the way down into our region, and you know, things like that. You know, you don't want to constantly inhale that kind of stuff. So having some bandanas is a good thing to have. Now, when we talk about our shelter, we're obviously talking about our house. When the power goes out, it is nice to have, and it's almost a necessity. Light is vital. Flashlights, you know, I prefer a headlight because I can put it on and be hands-free, and wherever I look, the light goes with me. It's a lovely thing. These are fairly inexpensive. I tend to stay away from the ones that require recharging because I have enough gizmos to recharge. I generally don't want to add something else. I do keep AAA batteries, which is what this takes. I do keep a stock of those in a bin. I don't have a battery buddy or whatever that fancy thing is. They're cool looking, but I don't have one. I just use a plastic bin in a closet upstairs that has an assortment of batteries. And I generally always have the batteries. I try to stick with the same battery when I buy stuff. You know, AAAs, they're very common and they go in a lot of different stuff. So I tend to stick with those. But, having a decent headlight, or a decent handheld flashlight, far more powerful to have a bigger beam. If I hear something outside, or if the dog's outside and I need to look around the yard or something, this is a bigger beam than, just a headlight. And then, of course, we have our EDC, small, in our pocket. I carry EDC flashlight and knife, and we'll get to that in a minute. But, having a redundancy when it comes to light, even if it's candles. Now, these, I bought a case of these. They were much taller. They were probably about that tall, maybe 8 inches tall, 3 inches in diameter. I'm not sure. And I put them on this plate here because the past, I'd have to say 5 or 6 years, every time the power goes out, I grab this. I keep it downstairs on a shelf, just as you see it. I light the 3 candles. I stick it in the kitchen, and it basically 3 candles lights up the whole room. So I don't have to continually use the flashlight. These candles have burned for hours and hours and hours. I want to say that each candle burns for 21 hours or something crazy like that. I picked these up online. They were like a wedding candle. They're very tall. I forget. I bought a case of them, and I've only used 3, and that was 15 years ago. So having some candles, and I'm sure the wife has some smelly candles around or some tea light candles. But as far as what I have in my preparedness supply, that's what I have, is the larger candles that I can very easily light with some matches, or I have a lighter, a Bic lighter. There's tons of these around. I buy them in the 8-pack, and I stash them all over the place, in the truck, in my pocket. So can always light something. And now that brings us to, I didn't bring my phone down. It's upstairs. But our electronic gadgets that require charging. Small charging banks, the USB, you plug it in, you can charge your phone. Something this size, I think, gets me 1 or 2, maybe 3 charges on my phone. This also was given to me free at work. But I know you can buy these. I'm pretty sure I've seen these or something similar to it at the grocery store that Duracell makes. That's about this size. Probably gives you 1 or 2 extra charges on your phone. I don't know, but I don't remember them being that expensive. But these are pretty common. They're pretty inexpensive, and it's a good thing to have. And don't forget, if the power goes out, our car still works. At least it should, if we have a car. For those that don't have a car, you can skip over to the next part. But in a power outage situation where we're utilizing our phone, for communication or for emergency updates, and the battery dies, you can always go to your car and charge your phone. Now, I also have several of these, and these are, it's a power supply charging station. This is actually designed to, this plugs in here, and you can actually hook it to your car battery and jumpstart your car. These are pretty, they're not hateful. I think I paid about $40 or $50 for this one. It's called a Nexpo. It's 2,000 amps. It has USB connections, and I use this mainly as an emergency backup in my truck. I had to run out to the truck to get this, because this is where, that's in the truck is where this normally lives. But which it will start my vehicle if the battery dies. But I tell you, I've used this mainly for recharging my phone and my electronics while camping. It lasts all weekend. I've charged multiple phones multiple times with one of these, and then it just plugs back in either to the cigarette lighter or the power port in the car, or it plugs in to a USB charging connection at home or on my computer. It charges with the plugged into the wall with the USB. That's how it charges the fastest. but it does charge other ways. And then there's items such as this that you can pick up, fairly inexpensive. This is just a small portable solar panel. This lives with my backpacking gear. When I'm on longer trips, I don't always take it, but I do have it in case I decide to carry it because it's got a little weight to it. It weighs about 3 or 4 pounds. And then, of course, there's cables that go with it. You know, and of course, when you're backpacking, ounces make a huge difference. So I don't always take it, but I do have it available to me. I do take it when I'm camping in case my charging box dies. I can throw this up on the roof of the truck or the hood of the truck and plug this into it. I did do that once for testing, and it charged for about 6 hours, and I got about half of this. So it would take quite some. I've never tried to charge the small one with it, but I did try to charge the big one once, and it charged in direct sunlight for 5 or 6 hours, and I barely got half of this charge. So not the most efficient, but in a situation where you don't have too many options and you do have this as an option or a larger one, at least it's redundancy. You know, I can use my car or my truck to charge my electronics, or I could use this, or I could use this. And I know the wife keeps a couple of these in her work bag, you know, as backups. They're small, they weigh next to nothing, and in a pinch, you plug your phone into it and you can get a charge on your phone. All right, that wraps up everything that I have out here on the table, but I do want to talk about a few other things briefly. When we talk about emergency preparedness, you know, we talk about the basic necessities: the shelter, our house, the food, canned goods, water, bottles of water. We got medical supplies and hygiene supplies, and the final subject, or one of an important subject, is security. I don't live in an area where security is too much of an issue, but I can't speak for everyone. And we've all watched the news, and we've all seen on the internet when the power goes out, there are people out there that they seize the opportunity to commit nefarious acts. One level of security is a flashlight. When it's dark and you hear a noise outside, you go out there with a flashlight. That is essentially a level of security. Now, when you need to find your way to the bathroom in the dark, the flashlight helps you get there. It's dual purpose. So the flashlight can help. Another good thing is floodlights. If you live, or at least your house has the ability to where you can put up some floodlights, the kind that are on a sensor that come on when it gets dark or with motion are great. But ultimately, all you need is, if you have power, you can flick a switch, the light comes on, and you can see if there's anyone out there, even if it's an animal, a raccoon, when you get into your trash can. That is still qualifies a nefarious act. A raccoon into your trash can, you know, is not something that you want. No more than someone, a two-legged person, or, you know, a two-legged risk, danger. Basically somebody coming to steal or rob or take advantage. I don't always know how to word things delicately, but basically, you know, some nefarious individuals, you know, coming to seize the opportunity of a power outage or a desperate situation. I did not bring one down, which I thought about it before I started the video, and I completely forgot to grab it. I have them in the other room. Is bear spray, or defense spray. You know, you can get it in little bottles, excuse me, or larger bottles, depending on how much you want to spend on it. I've even seen it in little small keychain sizes, you know, just some spray, mace or pepper spray. You know, there's a bunch of different kinds out there. That's always good to have. And strangely, I don't remember where I picked it up, but I remember somebody saying that wasp and hornet spray also is a good thing to have around. And I do have some of that. Obviously, I use it for wasps or hornets. And yeah, it does spray out of that can 20 feet. In a pinch, I would use that as well. If there were two-legged dangers approaching and that's all I had was wasp and hornet spray, I wouldn't hesitate to defend myself with wasp spray, pepper spray, or some sort of weapon. I'm certainly not going to suggest or tell you that that's what you need to have. The best defense is good common sense. If you see a situation that looks like it may not work out for you, then don't be there. Leave. Avoid the situation so you don't have to use pepper spray or a flashlight or take it to another level where you're using something a little more lethal. And we're going to get to that next, because all of this stuff is great. And I know a lot of the channels that people watch, the first thing they go for is, a ballistic vest or a plate carrier or a chest rig and all this fancy and these big weapons and all that. And not everyone's into that. And I get that. And you don't have to be. You can defend yourself with a flashlight. You can defend yourself with pepper spray. You can defend yourself with wasp and hornet spray, or you can defend yourself with a firearm. You can go as big as a large firearm, an AR platform, or anything similar. Shotgun, 12 gauge is always good. 9 times out of 10, that racking of the shotgun is going to be enough to deter somebody. They'll hear that and be like, "Ooh, I know that sound. I don't want no parts of this person." And God forbid anybody in a situation ever has to utilize any of those tools, but it's redundancy. I do have flashlights. I do have floodlights on my house, and those are levels of security. When I hear something, I turn the light on. 9 times out of 10, that's enough to deter whatever the danger is, because the light's on. Nefarious individuals, whether two-legged or four-legged, they like darkness. So turning the light on usually is all it takes, whether it's a flashlight or a floodlight. If it's not enough, I do have pepper spray and mace, and I even have wasp and hornet spray. Not sure if that would be my go-to, because I have other redundancies that that I could use. And then of course we have our everyday carry. This is a FN that I carry regularly as my everyday carry. Now, you certainly have to check the laws in your state as far as if you're permitted, whether it be constitutional carry or it requires a secondary permit. So certainly you want to follow the law and abide by it at all times. But again, levels of redundancy. The flashlight. I have a knife in my pocket. It's part of my EDC. I carry it all the time. It goes with me every day, all the time. A knife in my pocket, my flashlight. I have floodlights on my house. God forbid, and I hope it never happens, that I have to resort to firearms to protect myself or my family. But I have that option if needed. Is it necessary? No. Is it an option that gives me a sense of security? Yes. If you're in a situation where you have no interest in a firearm, you don't have to. You can avoid the situation, or you can utilize the other levels that I've explained: the pepper spray, the flashlight, the floodlights, even a baseball bat. It's better than nothing. Or a frying pan. A ton of people have been hit with a frying pan and didn't like it too much. So it doesn't always have to be this extreme. Back to what I was saying about the dollar cans of green beans. It's basic. I think this flashlight came in a 2-pack for about 20 bucks. And it's multi-purpose. It can scare things away. It can show me where I need to go or what I need to see. And I can use it to defend myself. You know, I could clunk somebody with this and probably deter them from, you know, trying to commit any further nefarious acts. And that about wraps it up. Certainly, if you have any questions, I know I went over a lot of stuff here. Go ahead and put them in the comments. My channel is still small enough to where I can check the comments and I can answer, you know, fairly easily and quickly. And I'm more than happy to answer any questions that anyone, you know, may have. And thanks for watching. This about sums it up, and good luck in your journey. And remember, the longest journey starts with the first step. And if this is your first step, then it's an easy one. Everybody can do it. Have a great day, folks.